Hi, I'm Firas, and welcome back to BrandBucket Academy. In this episode, we're diving into the visual side of branding, logos, colors, typography, and the building blocks of how your brand looks and feels. Margot Bushnaq, founder and CEO of BrandBucket, shares her perspective on how visual identity creates instant emotional resonance, reinforces recognition, and communicates the essence of your business before a single word is read. We'll cover design strategy, consistency, working with professionals, and how to make sure your visuals align with your brand's purpose and personality. Let's get into it. Today, we're going to talk about designing visual elements. Everybody's favorite topic. Well, maybe not everybody. The power of visual identity. Why are visual elements like logos, colors, and typography so important to a brand?
It's really all about the first impression, your eyes. Before you read anything, you're going to take in the scene. You're going to look at the logo, you're going to look at the website, you're going to look at whatever other materials they're presenting you. And that immediately strikes a chord with you emotionally, whether you recognize it or not. It's setting the tone of everything that's about to come. And on the flip side, once you've established a brand, it really can be something that people recognize and gravitate to, and what helps them remember you. So pretty much everyone in the world, if you show them a golden M, everyone knows what that refers to. That's McDonald's. You know, they've done such a good job at that particular tone of yellow, that particular curvature of the M. They've been so consistent with it and built it into their architecture and into their signs that it's a love brand at this point. It's the golden arches.
Yeah. So, how do visual cues help people recognize and remember a business?
If you're very consistent with your visual cues, and if it's something that stands out and makes sense with your brand, then as people come across it, especially more visual people, they will start to associate that design with you. You won't even need a name at that point. If your logo is strong enough, sometimes you don't even need the name behind it.
Yeah. What's the connection between visual identity and overall brand perception?
Your visual identity should reflect your voice and your personality and your audience. It's going to be a mix of, the design elements that are in there, the typeface that you use, the colors that you use.
Yeah. Next, we're going to be talking about the key components of visual design.
Mm.
What are the core visual elements every brand should have?
Well, I'm not a designer, but I've looked at more logos than most people, I think.
Yeah.
And I study logos. They all should have some kind of relevance to either what the business does or a kind of a link to the business's story, or some indication of one of the key features of the business, something that either consciously or subconsciously customers associate with each one of those pieces, either with the story or what you do or how you do it.
So, how should a brand choose its color palette, fonts, logo style?
Well, colors all mean different things. And you'll see that different colors appear more often in different industries, and that's for a reason. So black is usually associated with simplicity and elegance. Blue is kind of steadfast and strong. You find a lot of big financial companies and software companies using blue. You find red and yellow almost consistently across every restaurant chain, because those are like colors associated with hunger and appetite and emotional. They're more high emotional, high vibrational colors. So and green obviously is for anything kind of natural or eco-friendly. So if you just look out across the brands in your industry, you're going to see a consistent color scheme. And unlike a name where you need to maybe separate yourself from your competitors, it can be a good idea to follow that color scheme as your competitors to give that subtle cue that you are in that industry and you represent the same values that most people in the industry do.
A form of belonging.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What role does consistency play in creating a recognizable visual identity?
If you're not consistent, it won't be recognizable. If Starbucks from the get-go had used a different mermaid or had used, an S and a mermaid and something else, its iconic mermaid logo at this point wouldn't have been as recognizable as it is. But they put that logo on everything, on every window, on every cup, and using it over and over and over is what creates that memorability.
Yeah, the consistency. But you wouldn't be against the evolution and refining the logo, refining the color set, refining the font styles, but staying consistent and true to the original is something that you want to try to maintain, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. The companies put a lot of effort when they do a logo redo, and the effort and the difficulty comes from hearkening back to the original logo while also giving it a very fresh treatment.
Yeah.
You look at something like Jack in the Box, that was a very square box with, Jack written very kind of uniformly across it, and they took it into something a bit more free form that still had the callback to the red box.
Yeah.
So you could tell it's the same brand even though it evolved.
Yeah. Next, we're going to be talking about designing with purpose. How can founders ensure their visual identity aligns with their values and audience?
You can't be sure. You have to. I think a lot of the visual identity, it's going to be your decision, and there's not really an alignment. It can't be out in left field. It has to make sense for what you do. And it has to resonate with you since you are the person creating the voice and the brand. But your audience is the consumer of your logo. I don't think it's the other way around. Your audience doesn't define your logo. You just have to... There's usually not a lot of feedback on logos, honestly. They just are what they are.
Would you recommend founders to actually take their last few options of maybe logo designs and pass them on to their potential customers and give feedback in that sense? Or
I personally don't think that's necessary. I think it's really up to you. I think as long as it's clear and it conveys a lot of what your product conveys. If your product is simple, then your logo should be simple. If your product is kind of has more flourish to it, then your logo should have more flourish. And I think as long as you're satisfied, the only caveat I would say is if you are a company where design is a huge part of your kind of core values, so good design, or if you're speaking to artists or designers, then you can't have a cheap logo. You're going to get called out real fast.
Yeah. What's the danger of designing a brand based solely on personal taste?
You're one person, and I think your customers are thousands and hundreds of thousands of people. And if you immediately, even from your very close friends, if you show them a logo and there's a negative reaction, and specifically the same negative reaction over and over, that's really hard to read, or I can't tell that that's a T, then even if you really like it, you should incorporate some of that feedback.
How do you create a visual system that scales across packaging, websites, social media, pretty much your marketing, your communication? platforms.
That's definitely something that designers get paid well for. If you are on a shoestring budget and you're just starting and you just want to build your business the lean way, I think the things you need to be mindful of is how the logo looks on different color backgrounds, how the logo fits into a rectangle like a business card, how it can look on social media. These are the basics as far as the different places where your logo is going to be. If you have packaging, where on the packaging is your logo going to be, if it's there at all. And if you have if you look at it that way and you kind of have a holistic view of it, you'll be fine.
Yeah, very cool. Working with designers, your favorite people.
They are my favorite people. You're a designer.
When should a founder consider hiring a professional designer or agency?
When you can afford it. It's worth every penny, usually.
Yeah.
They think of things that most people who aren't design inclined don't think of. And it can really, a lot of those small things make a difference in the long run. If you have a good logo from the beginning that takes care of all of the things that I just mentioned that you need to think about, if someone else has thought about it already, there's going to be less tweaks to it. It's going to be more consistent, and it's going to allow you to just use the same logo over and over, which creates that memorability.
Perfect. What makes a good design brief? And how should you communicate your brand vision? Targeting the designer in this case.
A pet peeve of most designers are clients that get in the way. So designers need to know what you stand for. If you're looking for something simple or not simple, they need to know who your target audience is. They need to know what industry you're in. But then don't nitpick. You can tell when a logo has been nitpicked, where it's gone back and forth in the design process too many times and it's not holistic anymore. Then that's a case where there was a brief given and then there was just too much back and forth from the client. So be open-minded. When the designer comes to you with some options, accept them as they are.
Yeah. Or sleep on them at least.
Yeah, exactly.
No knee-jerk reaction and so on. Yep. How can founders collaborate effectively with designers, even if they don't speak design fluently?
I think a good designer speaks founder very fluently. So it's a matter of finding the right person. And to find the right person, I would just look at their portfolio of work. And if what they've done in the past resonates with you and you can actually see yourself using something that they've done in the past, you're going to be fine. You're going to have a good relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great advice. I think like a lot of founders end up gravitating towards designers that have done the logo for this company or the logo for that company. But so you think about it as it became a big brand and so on and so on. But ultimately, you're really not thinking of what does that logo actually mean to you. So looking what resonates back, like you said, and finding logo designers that have done work that you can identify with ultimately is the most important part.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And what you plan to do with your logo. I mean, I don't know if at the time Nike knew that they were going to put the swoosh on their shoe. I don't know if that was part of the brief, that we need something that can actually go on the side of a shoe. But had it been that, that's exactly. So if you need something that fits on a polo shirt or that goes on a shoe or has a very specific placement, then you need to go and look for designers that have done things like that.
Yep. Next, we're going to be talking about how we bring it to life. What's your advice for someone creating their brand visuals from scratch?
Not using a designer?
Yep.
Most great logos focused much more on the typeface, or at least the treatment of the word, than the extra design element that comes with them. So in that case, I think simpler is better. Don't go overboard trying to add too many visual elements outside of your name. Because if you're just starting out, your name is the most important thing that you want people to remember. And so that's the piece you should focus on. Decide whether you want it all uppercase, all lowercase. Decide if you want it to be a serif font or a non-serif font or a script font. And then tweak it and play with it a little bit that way. But everyone should, if you're looking for just the most simple way to start, it's just take your name and do a treatment on it, and that's your logo.
What's a common mistake you see in early stage visual branding?
Pretty much what I just said, that they focus too much on the extras, on
The symbolism.
the symbolism. And so they want a gorilla to go with their logo, and there'll be so much work done on the gorilla, and then the name itself is just sitting there off to the side. And then that's great if you can grow into a brand that everyone recognizes the gorilla and you can use the gorilla in place of your name. But most cases, that's not going to happen. You have to be really huge to do that. So you need to focus on how your name itself looks.
Yeah. What mindset should someone have when evolving their brand identity over time?
I would say if it's going to evolve, because there's a lot of cases where brands haven't changed and they still are as good today as they were 100 years ago. But if you are going to change to keep pace with the times or to attract a different audience, it should be very subtle. And definitely each progression of the logo should have some reference back to a previous or maybe even the original version of the logo. I mean, if you're going to end up, if you change it 10 times and number 10 is very different than number 1, as long as along the way it made sense, each new one made sense to the previous one, then you're probably
They're all
okay.
stitched together, basically, all the way back. Yeah. Oh, that's great advice. Well, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. And we'll see you in the next segment. Your brand's visual identity is your first impression and a lasting one. From the golden arches to a clean word mark, great design lives in consistency, intentionality, and clarity. Whether you're starting from scratch or refining your look, remember your logo, typography, and colors don't just decorate your brand, they define it. If you're ready to explore brandable names that look as good as they sound, visit BrandBucket.com and start building a visual identity your audience will remember. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.